What's going on, my friends, business owners, entrepreneurs, and those side hustlers out there? We've got a special guest for you today. Again, the purpose of this podcast is to help you to join the Seven Figures Club. Only 5% of businesses generate 7 figures per year in sales and income. And we've got an expert here in a very unique part of the tech world that's very important. Obviously, a lot of you are busy building out apps and user experiences. Today, our special guest is Satyam Kantamneni. And Satyam is a very unique entrepreneur. He's the CEO, Chief Experience Officer, if you will, of UX Reactor. In less than 7 years, UX Reactor has become the fastest growing specialized experience design firm in the US with a team of 50 plus employees spread out over 3 continents. Now, prior to founding UX Reactor, Satyam led various in-house design organizations such as Citrix and PayPal. He also is an alumnus of Harvard Business School. While at Harvard, Satyam realized that most businesses aren't leveraging the full power of user experience design as an engine for strategic growth. So he resolved to change that. And through UX Reactor, Satyam demonstrated that UX can and should drive enterprise-wide innovation and business outcomes. UX Reactor has enabled its client partners to generate hundreds of millions in additional revenue from user-centered innovation. He is passionate about user-centered innovation, and he also authored a book titled User Experience Playbook, a practical guide to fuel business growth, which will be released in April of 2022. Well, Satyam, welcome to the podcast.
There are over 32 million businesses in the US, and over 90% of them will never break 7 figures in annual sales. So how do we as entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs break into that 7 figures club? This podcast will relentlessly share the secrets, strategies, and tactics I've used to create 3 multi-7 figures businesses and bring in even more successful entrepreneurs than me to share their inspirational stories and tactics to success. You can create your dream business and life right now. So buckle up and let's go.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're very excited to learn with someone so connected. You know, obviously, technology companies are so vital and so important and create valuations and growth, even though, you know, obviously, some will say that right now, tech companies are seeing valuations decrease, but most companies are as part of that. But tech companies are more valuable than almost every other, you know, industry type out there in the world today. And technology is where growth is going to be coming from. So that said, technology growth comes back to applications, and these applications have to have a great user experience. So we're very excited to talk about that today. Before we dive into that topic of expertise, we love to find out more about what makes great entrepreneurs like yourself tick. Tell us, if you would, a few maybe key experiences or something in your upbringing that you feel led you to entrepreneurship.
I come from a military family,
Wow.
Very disciplined. And I think there's a sense in military, which is, you know, you make what you make with the resources you have, and you solve the problem in hand, and no excuses, right? So I think that is, in a sense, a very an ingrained model. And I actually wanted to be an officer in the Indian Army, actually, to be precise.
Wow.
The reason I didn't get selected was because I was colorblind. So I decided that's so medically unfit.
Well, you and I share the same problem.
Awesome. That makes 2 of us. But the ethos has been very strong. And for me, the entrepreneurial journey is actually solving a problem, or maybe solving a frustration and a larger level, because I spent about 10 years, a decade, feeling that I didn't achieve much in terms of impact. Was in good places, good titles, good money, but really not much impact. And that was the basic call to action to say, what do I want to do with it? And I think the ethos of saying that, you know, if you don't, then something, you know, no one will. And that was basically the start of the entrepreneurial side of it. Again, living in the Valley, because I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, it just seems like, you know, entrepreneurship is so well tolerated that, you know, it was a matter of like everyone's trying to do something, everyone's trying to change the world. So it wasn't too hard to make that shift, and I'm so glad I made that shift 8 years back. Unfortunately, with my co-founder, who also is my brother, so kept the ethos pretty consistent.
Oh, that's awesome. What a great. So at some point you're like, hey, I'm in this tech world. I'm in a great opportunity. Life is going well, but you wanted more. You wanted an impact. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs for us, we want a couple things. We want freedom, and entrepreneurship gives you that opportunity to a certain extent. And we want impact, because all the money in the world doesn't replace the positive impact that you can make as an entrepreneur. And that's what's so impactful and valuable. And so what led you to, actually say, okay, this problem of user experience needs to be solved. I'm the one to do it. How did that come about, where you actually took the plunge, took the risk, and went full in to launching, what became UX Reactor?
So I probably will take a step back, right? And I think that the thing to take a step back is the word user experience design is a very consciously constructed word. In which case the user comes before the experience, comes before the design. Unfortunately, 99% of the companies focus on the design before the experience, before the user. And that was what I did for 10 years. I was focused too much on the design, and organizations wanted designs, screens, apps, applications, without truly understanding who the user is, what the experience is. And some of the best experiences is with zero screens. And so the word design actually convoluted it too fast. So for me, the frustration was like, hey, there's something is going wrong. It's not multiplying business value at the level it should. At the same time, you have companies like Apple and Tesla and Airbnb coming out with design-first technology. They're doing really well. But then and many organizations and leadership started investing in design. But the fact is they were not getting the value. And there's still many organizations struggle with that. And for me as a leader driving this in companies, I had to figure out what is it that I'm doing wrong, or what is it that I'm not doing so right. And that basically became the call to action to say, let's go and figure out how can we build the best user experience design in a way that it multiplies business value. And that, when you start looking at that, that basically ended up, okay, let's go look at building a firm, experimenting. I think UX Reactor for me was never to build an agency. That was never the intent. For me, it was always the first experiment and the biggest experiment in my life to say, how can we go solve this problem? And if it died in 2 years, I was fine with it. But then the fact is it's surviving and thriving, partially because I think we realized that the user comes before the experience, comes before the design, and design comes before technology, which is a sequence that many leaders don't understand. And because they don't invest it that way, they basically always lose a lot of money.
That's brilliant. A lot of value bombs that Satyam just dropped for everybody. So pay attention. He's talking about, and this is with whatever business you're in, you focus on serving the customer and solving their needs first before creating the product, before creating, the design, everything that goes with that. Now, one thing you talk a lot about with your team is the importance of being user-centric, right? User-centric. So how can a company become user-centric, if they aren't, or if they already kind of built a product, or they've got some design ideas, like how does this process, what's worked well as someone wants to transition to be customer and user-centric, which is such an important thing?
So Leo, I think this is one of the biggest myths that I deal with in my line of work. Everybody says they're user-centric, but no one is. That's a problem. Right. And I'll tell you how, right? So I've had a CEO tell me this, say that, hey, I'm user-centric because I give every user what they want. But the reality is you build a product for everyone, you're building a product for no one. Exactly. And so that's the unfortunate realization. So you pack it up with features, your biggest customers get features, your long tail gets features, any sale gets a feature, and then you actually have a feature-rich product that is doing nothing for anyone. So that's one example. What exactly, now to answer your other question of what makes a company user-centric, it's a mindset. Now, the point is, especially today, when we have leaders and organizations distributed, people working from anywhere, do they understand the user the same way as everyone else, or they should? right? You have a developer sitting halfway around the world, not understanding how healthcare systems work or not understanding how fintech systems work on the other side of the world. Now, how are they coding it? They're coding to a spec, in which case they are just basically taking the smarts out and they're just coding to that. So that's again where they're not user-centric. Product managers are talking to users and saying, hey, what do you want? And that's not user-centric. That is just basically being, so the factor is, how do you build the empathy in your organization? How do you innovate around that? How can your finance guy come in and give an idea too in the product ideation, because they are as empathetic to the problem as the designer is? These are nuances that are getting missed. And unfortunately, because of which, most times user-centric is like, I speak to users, and I give users what they want. I'm user-centric, which is actually the wrong measure to start with. The right measure is that we know who the user is, we know what the pain points are, we know what the journey is, and all of us together are solving it.
It's kind of like the old adage, if I'm marketing to everybody, I'm actually marketing to nobody. And it's the same thing with having a great user-centric experience. You know who your user is, and it's custom put together for that dream avatar, that dream client, that dream user who's using it. So it's super important to understand that. What are some of the steps that companies can take or entrepreneurs can take to really get to know their user better and create that experience for them?
So I think a lot of times is just spending the time with them, right? So now what's unfortunate is 40% of the products today and features today are still shipped without speaking to one user, right? So that's the nature. And then why do we have 40% of the products fail, of new features and startups fail because of product market fit? Now, these are symptoms of you not knowing who your customer is, not knowing what their pain points are, not giving them what they need and when they need it. And that's exactly the symptoms that they have. Now, how do you actually resolve this? You resolve this by truly understanding who they are, knowing who your customers are. Like I've had leaders who I've spoken to, and this is, again, anyone who's listening here, it's a test for themselves. Like, can you identify your top 5 users, identify the top 5 issues for them, and identify the measures that you know that you're going to deliver for them in the next 1 year? And if you can't do that, that means you're not user-centric. You basically are going to ramble off a little bit of here, there. And this is unfortunately what's happening across the industry, and especially in digital products, because digital products is like very much like put a feature out there and then move on to the next one. Companies are not even instrumented to know exactly what the users are doing. So there's a lot of this, I would say, digitally transformed but experientially painful experiences out there. And that's kind of causing a lot of churn, because you really don't know who your user is, what their pain points are, what their journey is, what am I doing for them, what the measure of success is. It's a very strong rigor and mindset that needs to go along. And unfortunately, trillions of dollars are being pasted on the garb of digital transformation without doing this. And that is why I've seen so many people, and there's a great case study in NHS. They spend, I think, close to $12 billion only to kind of kill the project, because they just were everybody is trying to do something for someone, but nothing actually happened, and then they kill the project. And that's just daily happening within the corporate world and startup world.
I mean, that's just crazy. I think the statistic that really got my attention that you just shared is 40% of these products and apps are built out without even, figuring out who your user is, how you're specifically solving the problem. They're just being built and thrust out into the marketplace, and just a lot of wasted money. So for the audience listening and the entrepreneur listening who realizes they need to have a great application, if they aren't creating recurring revenue and subscription models through software and application, they're not going to build nearly as valuable companies. So they need to be moving towards that. They understand that. And now they're trying to understand this world that you're talking about. And there's terms like UI, UX, and XT. Please help us kind of define these terms and have an understanding of where they fit in the process of building out software and an application and delivering value to your customer.
Absolutely. So I think that there's a lot of abbreviations that get thrown around in this line of work. But I'll kind of break it up and unpack it in 3 levels. It's called a UI level, a PX level, and an XT level. And all together, it's user experience. In order to build a great experience, you can build it on a screen level, which is UI, user interface. You can build it on a platform or a product level, which is a product experience, or you can build it on an organization level, which is experience transformation. Now, I'll just unpack that a little further, because a lot of times people angle, and the design means that getting into the screens. I'm going to build a beautiful app. I'm going to build a great dashboard. I'm going to build an awesome, onboarding, whatever that is. But that is foundationally a UI level problem, and screens, colors, alignment, and this is all important, but not before the experience itself. Like, how is someone looking at that experience in the product and the platform when they actually are logging in through a mobile screen, when they're logging in, observing? So how does that whole system play together to kind of achieve that intent and outcome for them? That's the product experience. And I would say that a majority, 50% of the companies are in the UI, about 20 to 25% are in the PX level, and less than 5% are in the XT level, where the whole organization is energized around the users, innovating around them, ideating around them, tracking and experimenting around them, and then everyone is kind of getting there to kind of make sure that they're building the best experience for every aspect of the business is driving the best experience, and that's XT. All together is still user experience, and that's kind of how I would unpack that. I also unpack that in the book. But overall, as I said, majority of the companies are focused on the UI side and the design side, in which case they're not getting the value, because that's the most easy to copy, because your competitor can do that, someone else can do that. But then if you're starting to play the PX and the XT level, you kind of are building a moat that'll survive a decade and more.
No question, no question. Now, obviously, as you're going through and you're understanding these terms and you're building out a customer experience, there's generally a team, there's a leader there trying to help that team. So how can that leader kind of nurture innovation in their team and get their team thinking more about this user experience and becoming user-centric? What does that look like? In addition to mindset, what are some of the specifics that leaders should actually do to kind of, create innovative solutions that their team are implementing, that their team are creating?
I think there's a lot to do. This is a profession. This is not a skill.
Yeah.
And that's the unfortunate part, that many leaders treat this as a skill. And tech marketing is a profession. Engineering is a profession. There's a lot of different things that come together. Being a doctor is a profession. User experience is also a profession. And for that, you need a leader, just like a chief marketing officer, you need a chief experience officer. What are you doing? You're kind of measuring, you're curating, you are tracking, you are triggering. There's a lot of things that this leader is doing. Now, I'll unpack that further. Do you know what your top measure for each of your users are? What are the biggest pain points? Are you measuring them? That's the measure part. Do you know what the top users are and their journey, and defining how am I going to remove the pain point for every aspect for that, and have a roadmap for every user in the system? Everyone has a marketing roadmap, everyone has a product roadmap, but do you have a roadmap for your key users and say, I'm going to wow them, this is how I'm going to wow them in the next 1 year, 5 year? That's again a chief experience officer's role. Getting the right team of people, researchers, designers, prototypers, strategists together, and then kind of run that across the company. That's kind of, again, a part of that role. There's a lot of these things that need to activate. Now, for a CEO, unfortunately, like, how do you get, like, you call customer service, or you call professional services, or you do self-service in your product? They all have to be the same experience. They have to seem like the same way. It can't be like I call customer service, I get a different experience, versus I kind of do self-service, which is and that means I have to get different departments coming together, which is how I need to now have a collective roadmap that I'm driving across the company. So these are all key things that's why I say it's a profession. There are a lot of artifacts, a lot of tools. The whole organization needs to be activated around it. And that's truly when you are able to kind of unleash the power of, user-centeredness to kind of drive your business value.
Well said. Beautiful value bomb shared there. I guess my next question would be, all right, so I've got this app, I've got this customer experience, I've been building out the roadmap on our end. If you imagine a new user coming into your world, using your application software dashboard, and they get there, what are some of the successful strategies that you like to suggest your clients take a look at in terms of having, once you're in, what's the roadmap? Even though you know your customer, hopefully you've really spoken to them, how do you make it a seamless experience for them to get to know the application and the benefits available in there? What are some of the successful strategies you recommend be considered in that situation for the new user? They just arrived. What should they be seeing, to utilize everything within the application?
So I think it's like having a new guest in your home or a hotel. You kind of walk them in, you kind of describe how the hotel is structured, where the breakfast is, where the food is, where the swimming pool is. You kind of tell them they need a wake-up call. The same thing applies here. I mean, you kind of onboard them cleanly. You bring them in. You kind of say, what's your first time to value? And what is value for them? If you don't know that, then you need to kind of learn that. Give them that single thing. As if you think they're just out of a flight, you give them a drink. Knowing who your customer is, giving them what they need and when they want it is actually the secret of user experience. And then doing it consistently is kind of what will get them to keep them retained and keep them going. And that essence is what you're trying to do. Especially with technology, there's so many more techniques and methods available within the technology has become so much more powerful that, again, if I'm struggling with something, immediately if someone jumps in right there, instead of me trying to find a customer service number and then calling somebody and then trying to figure that out and waiting on a call, there's all nuances that go into it, depending on each system and product has its own journey.
Yeah, no question. Okay, so your new user comes in, you're showing them where everything is, how it works, where it's at, like they're arriving into a hotel room. Do you, and I'm sure there's a different answer based on, different application types and your user, but just kind of broadly, generically speaking, do you like that to be a video, or is it text and images that kind of pop up when they first get into the application, whether it's desktop or mobile? What do you kind of see the trends of success going? Is it either or? What do you think? Video or text and image once you get in?
So Leo, I think the answer is whatever works for them, right? So I'll share that on it. Because if you are working in a system that you're working with a user group that is younger, obviously they are much more video-centric. You're working with a user group that's older, you kind of are trying to give them more methods and tools and cheat sheets. A doctor would have a different construct. So again, knowing your user will define how you're designing that on a UI level. However, I'll give you some other scenarios that on an experience level, the PX level, where companies kind of also struggle. Like as soon as, let's say I'm moving to Google, I'm giving an example. I just moved from Teams, Microsoft Teams to Google. How do I bring my contacts here? How do I bring my calendar here? These are all elements of first-time experience. How do I bring my whole setup here? Because and those are structurally experienced problems that are not being really figured out. And like, now I had to integrate. I'm not at Google. We actually had to migrate our accounts from one setup to another. And it was painful enough that we had to bring third-party integrations. So finally, we said, "Screw it. We're not going to do that. We're going to stay where we are staying." But that's also the first-time experience. So I think there's UI level fixes for that. I mean, there is text, there is coach marks, there is videos, there is community. There is cheat sheets. There's so many ways that you can approach that. And it could be an experimental way of trying which one works for whom. And then on an experience level, understanding what does it mean for them to be situated? What does it mean for them to kind of have first-time value generated? And this is, again, it's a very multivariate problem. I don't think there's a straightforward answer to saying, how do you do that for
sure. And then what about user experience and support within that? What are some of the ideas or things that should be considered to make the support when your user runs into some sort of wall? What are some seamless solutions there in terms of providing great support within the app? I mean, obviously, when you're talking about an app, it can't be, for the most part, I would say, phone support service, obviously, anymore. So what are you seeing as some successful ways to provide support within that experience?
So I think, again, on a UI level, you're seeing conversational AI come in. You're seeing embedded IVRs. So immediately you kind of talk to somebody in the context of where you are and they know where you are. So there's a lot of these. And then again, you have to call somebody, email someone, which is kind of becoming less and less. But on an experience level, can you even, my question would be, can you avoid the problem? There's a whole school of design called it defensive design.
Yes, there
right?
it is.
So which, as we as designers are constantly looking at, we assume that every step will fail. How do we protect them from that, right? And how do we protect them from the entry level to kind of getting there? And these are all situational things that you have to really design. And that's what designers, as I say, it's a profession that you actually have people constantly looking at. How do I avoid this? If this is coming, then I can project that they're going to fail. So how do I get there? Because the worst case is where I'm trying to do something I'm not understanding. And I'm trying to find something, I'm not able to find something. So is it a findability issue? Is it a usability issue? So if you know that, you can really treat it on a PX level. And ideally, if the system is smart enough, the help will come to you. You don't go to help. And that is and how do you bring help to you? I mean, you can actually see that if an error comes in more than 2 times, you can actually say, I'm ready for you whenever you are, here's the button. And there's somebody ready for you, the Mayday function equivalent to that. So these are nuances that come in. And when you build these systems, that's when experience kind of goes up. And that's when you actually have higher retention.
Absolutely. And speaking of higher retention and reducing that churn with your subscription-based, application software, whatever it is that's your product out there, a lot of the research that I've read seems to indicate that whatever is done within the first few days of that user coming in is really sets the stage for whether they're going to remain sticky and have a higher lifetime value. What are some different ideas or solutions you've seen done within the first few days or hours or whatever it is to really cement that user relationship with that new application product? What are some ideas that you've seen be successful in creating that sticky relationship right at the get-go?
So I'll share a couple of points there, right? The first one I'll share is you need to know what value you're generating. If you don't know that, then we use the word time to value. For that particular user, if we do not understand what the value is that we're trying to generate, then we are kind of going blind. But once you know what the value is, why did this user even come into our system? And there could be different things. It could be accountant looking for all their reports in one place and starting to look at the first report. It could be different angles. Now, once you know that, the fastest I can get you to that is basically my whole and soul goal. Many companies lose the focus there. They're demoing it really well. They're selling it awesome, but then the user is kind of now stuck to kind of figuring out how do I get that beautiful report. That's kind of one key aspect that I'll share there. The other thing which is interesting is to the point of when you get users coming into a system, we need to make sure that they always get what they need in the context of what they get, where they are. A lot of times the systems are built as a generic system where you can get anything from when you need it. But I think we need to build it in the context of who they are, where they are. That element of personalization needs to also come in. And these are things that are not happening as cleanly because most times you are just building a one size fits all.
Really, really well said there. So why is experience transformation, XT, if you will, kind of the next frontier of digital transformation, in as you've been building this out and realizing how important and how many opportunities are missed? What's making it such a big part of the next frontier, the next stage in evolution of digital transformation?
Because there's an interesting paradox out there, right? The paradox is there are a lot more digitally transformed systems that are experientially painful. And I can give you a gazillion examples. You're looking at, let's talk about education, right? Right now, education is a different system for assessment, a different system for curriculum, a different system for payment. And when you look at this, and especially in the pandemic, everything went digital. So it's all digitally transformed. A lot of tools have been brought together, but experientially painful. There's no single place where you could look at everything together. The same thing is when you go to an automotive store or you go to a hospital, they are digitally transformed. So if you just to give you a statistic, a typical hospital or a healthcare center is a hodgepodge of at least about a dozen different systems and close to about 10 to 15 logins. So now think about it.
Right.
Like there's one for pharmacy, one for EHR. Now these are all digitally transformed, experientially painful. Now the best part is the company and the system that realizes this and starts bringing them together, that is where the
Yes.
value is. We did that with one company in automotive retail. In 5 years, they're valued at $3.5 billion, and then they
Oh,
grew
wow.
300% year over year last year.
So brilliant. And this is kind of actually something we've been working at too. We serve kind of small business owners and entrepreneurs. And so we've been, one of the questions we always get from our clients is, as they go through financing and use our marketplace, is, oh, I've got to log into, 10 different, logins for bank account, for loans, for lines of credit, for business credit cards. Why can't I just have it in one place? And so that's exactly what we've just been working on launching, is one place where they can see all of that financial information in one place, track their net worth. So I think it's a really good point that you're making of bringing things together. Now, I'm curious, in your experience, what % of companies are truly user-centric, would you say?
I think a lot of companies are, a lot of leaders will say, including people in the audience, would say they're user-centric. So I would say that percentage is high. Are they experience-centric or experientially transformed? I think that's less than 5%. So,
oh my goodness.
So I think that's the reason why many companies are not able to kind of drive that insane value for the business. Honestly, to get to 7 figures in the context of this podcast is not too hard if you know who your user is, because there's just so much money moving around in the world. But the challenge is, as you said, I mean, I think in one of your podcasts that 80% of the companies fail. They never reach that number.
Yes.
And the answer is, I think if you know your user, you're giving them what they are, you're doing it in a nimble and agile manner. I mean, it's doable. But the factor is, most times people don't get there and they don't have the right product for them. But user centricity is a mindset across the organization. It's just not the founder's mindset. That's another big problem that we see, that the founder cannot be everywhere. But how do you build an ecosystem and environment for everyone to thrive in user centricity? The way we define it, and the way you kind of build a program around that everyone is activated, everyone is measured on it, everyone is tracking on it, and more importantly, incentivized on it. That's kind of what would be. So that is less than 5%.
Unbelievable. So a lot of our audience right now, they're driving, they're working out, they're listening, and they're thinking, wow, this is some unbelievable information. And as everybody knows in this podcast, we don't want you to be a passive listener, just listening and learning great information, receiving these value bombs from Satyam. We want you to take action and move forward to solutions with your business so you can become user-centric and be one of the hopefully 5% of businesses that are creating an experience for their customer, through your product and your application. So where is the best place for them to take the next step and say, wow, I can try and figure this out on my own, or I could work with an expert like Satyam and his team? What's the next step that they can take to connect with you and your team and kind of, figure out some different strategies to be one of the 5% of companies that is customer and experience centric?
Leo, I think if people want to get a sense of what it entails, what does the system take, I think the best way to start is probably getting a copy of the book that we just put together with a lot of our techniques. The book is on Amazon and other places, and that's a great place to start if they want to do it themselves and get sensitized by themselves. If they want to kind of reach out for us to help them or support them in their journey, then the best is to kind of reach out to me on LinkedIn or hello@uxreactor.com. So again, we are here to support people. We really believe that experiences are the next frontier for digital systems. And I think they can do it themselves. We can do it for them. There's a lot of ways to do that. But more importantly, get sensitized to that is the first way of solving this problem.
No question. Can you show the book again, just one more time? I want to make sure that everybody listening knows, okay, the name of the book, you guys, is User Experience Design. So User Experience Design by Satyam. It's on Amazon. It's pretty simple. User Experience Design, right? So just Google User Experience Design or go to Amazon and type in User Experience Design. Start with the book. It's going to give you the right mindset, case studies, so that you can start to figure out better ways to be, user-centric and create an experience that transforms your business. I mean, the experience, you think about the great companies that you love to do business with, there's an experience. It's Apple's an experience. You open up that box, you pull out that beautiful, beautiful phone or that laptop or the AirPods, and starting to think of, once they get into your application, what's that experience like, and how are you making their problems solved quickly? Well, Satyam, really appreciate your time and your expertise. Again, guys, make sure you grab that book, Take Action. His website also is uxreactor.com, uxreactor.com, if you want to learn more information about his team and the magic they can create in the user experience department. Well, Satyam, the last word is yours. What is something, besides getting your book, that they can do today to start being more user and experience centric?
I think as they should just identify the top users, identify and sketch out quickly their journey. If they're not able to do that, that itself is an insight that you don't know much. Yep. If you know it, then write it down and say, what is the measure that you're going to move for every user a year from now?
Beautiful. Take action, guys. Implement in this business and make 2022 your breakthrough year. Doesn't matter if there's inflation, doesn't matter if there's a recession. Those who create great user experiences are going to win, and they're going to take even more market share during the next few months. Thank you for being a guest, Satyam.
Thank you.
Guys, take action, and we'll see you next time on the Seven Figures Club podcast.
Awesome. Thank you.
Are you looking for more seven-figure secrets, content, or even how you can launch your own recession-proof business? Then check out sevenfigures.com. That's the digit 7, FIGURES.com, where we share more videos, stories, strategies, funding solutions, entrepreneurial education, and even the secret business type that's recession-proof. Thank you for listening, and if you're finding value in our podcast, please give us a 5-star and invite others to join the club.